Welcome to the Mayo Pension video. Recently I've been asked by a number of clients, is it better to stay in the annual accumulations formula or switch to the new stable lump sum formula offered by the Mayo Pension? You might be wondering the same thing. My name is Michael Swartz. I'm a certified financial planner, I'm a fee-only fiduciary, and I specialize in working with retiring medical professionals here in La Crosse, Wisconsin. So if you're wondering, should I stay on the old formula or switch to the new one, then go ahead and watch this video. The decision on which pension option to take is based on a few simple criteria. And with that, let's jump over to the whiteboard and we'll outline what those criteria are and which decision is ultimately best for you. We'll see you at the whiteboard. Which pension accumulation formula you elect is based on two simple criteria: your wage and the interest rate on the day that you retire. The wage can be broken down into two tiers: those who earn less than $160,000 and those who earn more than $160,000. Let's take a quick look at those who earn less than $160,000. The way your pension benefit is calculated under the annual accumulation formula is very simple. They take your wage divided by 12 months and multiply that monthly wage by a 1.4% crediting factor to figure out your monthly benefit at retirement. Under the new stable lump sum formula, anyone earning less than $160,000 gets an 18% credit of their annual salary towards a lump sum. The reason the interest rate is the only other decision-making criteria is when you get to retirement, you can convert the lump sum to a monthly benefit or the monthly benefit to a lump sum. Based on the examples provided in the Your Mayo Pension Plan Formula Choice Decision Guide, there is a crossover that happens at 5.5%. That crossover at 5.5% means that if interest rates are at exactly 5.5% on the day you retire, the benefit will be equal regardless of which accumulation formula you elect. In any situation where interest rates are at or below 5.5%, it is better to accumulate your pension benefit under the annual accumulations model based on the math that Mayo has provided. Anytime interest rates are over 5.5%, it is better to accumulate your pension benefit under the new lump sum formula. The big question is, what are interest rates going to be at retirement? Well, nobody has a crystal ball, but what we do have is a look back at the recent history. We actually dove into the IRS tables that determine pension benefits, and we found that over the last 15 years, 95% of the time, interest rates that are used to calculate your pension benefit have been at or below 5.5%. So based on recent history, 95% of the time, it would have been to your benefit to have accumulated your pension benefit under the annual accumulations formula. If, for whatever reason, we enter a high interest rate environment and interest rates creep up and sustain themselves over 5.5%, then it will be better to accumulate your pension benefit under the new stable lump sum formula. Now for those of you who make over $160,000. Under the annual accumulation formula, the first $160,000 that you earn is converted to a monthly benefit and multiplied by that 1.4% factor to create a monthly benefit towards your pension. Let's use an example of, say, $250,000. The remaining $90,000 within that salary is converted again to a monthly income, but then it's multiplied by not a 1.4% factor, but a 2% factor. This is a nearly 50% increase in recognition on every dollar earned over $160,000 towards your pension benefit, and a very critical detail when comparing the two benefit plans. Let's take a look now at the stable lump sum formula. Once again, under the stable lump sum formula, the first $160,000 that you earn is multiplied by that 18% credit. But this time, that $90,000 that you earn is only multiplied by an 8% credit and is equal to an approximately 50% reduction in recognition towards your pension benefit. This was an aha moment for me when I dove into the details of this plan. When we compare the annual accumulation formula to the stable lump sum formula, we find that, once again, if interest rates are at or below 5.5%, it still makes sense to stay on the annual accumulation formula. In fact, it actually makes more sense to stay on the annual accumulation formula, not only because of that 50% increase in recognition we see for wages earned over $160,000, but also because of the decrease in recognition we see under the new stable lump sum formula for all wages earned over $160,000. Both of those factors point us towards staying on the annual accumulation model, confidently. But what if interest rates climb over that 5.5% break even? Well, as a greater portion of your wage climbs over that $160,000 threshold, it tips the scales in favor of maintaining the annual accumulation formula because of that 2% recognition. In fact, the greater portion of your income you earn over $160,000, the greater buffer you have against increases in interest rates. Another way to say that would be the greater your salary is, the more likely it is that it's to your benefit to stay on the annual accumulation formula. But once again, if interest rates rise and are sustained well above 5.5%, it may make sense to switch to the new stable lump sum formula. Maybe. But in general, the greater your salary is, the more likely it is that it's mathematically to your advantage to accumulate your pension benefit under the annual accumulations formula. All right, let's take a breath and then debrief. What have we learned? Over the last 15 years, we have been in a sustained low interest rate environment. This means that if you earn less than $160,000, 95% of the time, it would make mathematical sense to stay on the annual accumulations formula. However, if we enter a higher interest rate environment, it may make sense to switch to the stable lump sum. For those of you earning over $160,000, because there is a greater emphasis placed on dollars earned over that threshold under the annual accumulations formula, and a reduction in recognition under the new formula, it is mathematically advantageous to stay on the annual accumulations formula. However, if interest rates rise, it may make sense to switch to the stable lump sum, but it really depends on how much of your wage is earned over $160,000. So how can you ultimately determine which option is best for you? Ultimately, I put together this visual for you. Now, it's not to scale, but it's meant to illustrate that 95% of the time, over the last 15 years, interest rates have been at or below that 5.5% threshold, which means the annual accumulation model was the preferred pension formula to be in. Furthermore, as wages increase over that $160,000 threshold, because of the 50% increase in recognition under the annual accumulation formula and 50% decrease in recognition under the stable lump sum formula, the annual accumulation model is also the preferred formula to be in. The only factor worth considering is that 5.5% threshold and interest rates. If, for whatever reason, we enter and sustain ourselves in a high interest rate environment, the new stable lump sum formula will yield a greater pension benefit. So there you have it. Now let's close out the video with a few FAQs regarding the Mayo pension. Welcome back. This is the frequently asked questions portion of the video. Let's go one by one through some of the most common frequently asked questions that I've received regarding the Mayo pension plan. Number 1. What was all that, and what does it all mean? Ultimately, if interest rates stay low, as they have been for the last 15 years, and as your wage increases over that $160,000 threshold, there is a mathematical advantage to staying in the annual accumulations formula. If interest rates go up, those recommendations change. Question number 2. Where do interest rates come from? Interest rates are set by the Federal Open Market Committee, or the Fed. Basically, in high inflationary environments, the Feds will raise interest rates to reduce monetary supply in the economy. This creates fewer dollars chasing the same goods and ultimately decreases the inflation that we are experiencing. After COVID-19, interest rates have gone up because we've been experiencing inflation. However, once inflation breaks, it's typical that interest rates will come down to stimulate the economy. Question number 3. Which distribution option is best for me? This entire video was dedicated to finding out which accumulation formula got you the highest pension benefit. But at retirement, you will also have to elect a distribution benefit. That's a very case-by-case answer, but in general, the lump sum is the mathematically most advantageous distribution option to take. Question number 4. What is that $160,000 threshold about? Well, the Social Security wage base is $160,200, and that's actually the threshold, but I simplified it to $160,000 just for the sake of this video to illustrate the points in a simpler form. In general, Social Security recognizes up to $160,200, or the wage base, when calculating your Social Security benefit. Typically, pension managers will reduce the benefits that are received under that $160,200 threshold, as we see in the annual accumulation formula. But then for wages earned over that $160,200 threshold, the Social Security wage base cuts off. The final frequently asked question I've received is, how can we get in touch? Financial planning and the pension itself are both very complicated issues and complex problems to solve. If you're preparing for retirement and don't have a financial plan in place, it can create a myriad of issues. But having a financial plan can create a strong level of confidence as you transition from your working years into retirement. You can reach out to our operations director, Ben Gibson, with an email to team@laxfp.com, or you can give us a phone call at 608-534-4444. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you regarding your pension and your financial readiness for retirement.